Have you been following this whole Elon Musk Steve Bannon thing?
Oh yeah, it's getting pretty
It's
nasty.
like a full-blown public feud, and it seems like every day it escalates.
Definitely. And it's being called the MAGA Civil War
Hmm.
by some, which I think
Yeah.
kind of captures the intensity of it.
Yeah, it's more than just, like a Twitter spat or something. It feels like
Yeah.
there's some
Oh.
serious ideological and personal stuff going on there.
Absolutely. And the accusations that Bannon is making are pretty extreme.
Yeah, we found this YouTube video. It's from the Ring of Fire channel,
Okay.
and the title is pretty amazing. It's Steve Bannon goes ballistic on parasitic illegal immigrant Elon Musk.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
I mean, right there, you can tell we're dealing with some pretty strong opinions.
Yeah, that's not pulling any punches.
Not at all. So what we want to do today is really kind of unpack Bannon's claims,
Okay.
try to understand, where this animosity is coming from and what it means for,
Right.
the bigger picture.
Yeah, because it does seem like it started from something pretty specific, right? Like, wasn't it initially about immigration and labor?
It was. And it's interesting because it involved Musk and surprisingly, Vivek Ramaswamy,
Oh, yeah.
who the commentator in the video points out
Mm-hmm.
has kind of faded from the spotlight a bit recently.
Yeah, he's not as prominent as he was.
Yeah, but their stance at the time seemed to be, recognizing the need for skilled workers in the tech sector,
Right. It makes sense.
but also, maybe favoring some kind of immigration controls.
Sure.
It seemed like they were trying to balance, the demands of their businesses with
Yeah.
concerns about immigration.
Right. And then you contrast that with Bannon and Laura Loomer, who were taking a much harder line. Like
Yeah.
the commentator said, it was basically a no immigrants at all position.
Yeah, and it really shows you how much
Right.
of a spectrum of views there is, even within a movement like Magier.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder why it's so difficult to find
Yeah.
that middle ground.
Right? Like why is it always these extremes?
Yeah.
I mean, the commentator even points out that both sides seem to be kind of missing
Right.
a more nuanced approach.
Yeah, it's like they're just talking past each other.
Totally.
Yeah.
So how do you even begin to bridge that gap between, the economic needs
Right.
and these concerns about immigration?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face right now. You've
Yeah.
got, the economic side of things, like needing skilled labor for all this,
Yeah.
Rapidly changing technology.
Right.
And then you've got national security concerns. You've got the whole issue of cultural integration.
Mm.
And, people are worried about the impact on the communities and their jobs.
Yeah.
It's like all these different factors are all tangled up.
Right.
And it makes it really hard to find any kind of consensus.
Totally. But, things really ramped up when Bannon went on this Unheard podcast.
Oh, yeah. That's when things got really personal.
Yeah, he really went after Musk and called him a parasitic illegal immigrant,
Yeah. Wow.
which is a pretty wild accusation.
Yeah, and just straight up wrong about the illegal immigrant part.
Yeah, even the commentator in the video calls it stupid.
Yeah,
I mean, Musk's immigration status is totally public. He's not an illegal immigrant.
right.
So that part of Bannon's claim is just completely false.
It seems like he's trying to make Musk sound like some kind of outsider or a threat.
But then there's the parasitic part. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, he's basically pointing to all the government contracts that Musk's companies get,
Okay.
specifically Tesla and SpaceX. He even throws out a number,
Yeah.
$8 million a day.
$8 million a day. That's insane.
Yeah, and his argument is that these companies wouldn't even exist without this government funding.
So he's saying they're completely reliant on it.
Yeah, and he's framing it as this bad thing, like the government is propping up Elon Musk.
Right, like it's some kind of unfair advantage.
Exactly.
But isn't that kind of the point of those public-private partnerships?
Well, that's the debate, right? I mean, on the one hand, you can say that these contracts are helping to drive innovation.
Mm-hmm.
They're helping to support industries that are important for the country.
Right.
But on the other hand, you could say that it's creating this dependence. Like,
Right.
are these companies becoming too reliant on government money?
And is that a bad thing?
Yeah, that's a tough question.
It is. And what's interesting is that the commentator in the video actually agrees
Right.
with the parasitic label, at least in the context of all this government funding.
That's surprising.
Yeah. But he makes a good point. He says it's not about whether Musk is an immigrant or not.
Right.
It's about whether he's taking advantage of the system.
I see.
So it really comes down to this question of what's the appropriate level of government support for private companies?
Yeah, that's the crux of it.
But, Bannon doesn't stop there. He also goes after Musk on a personal level.
Oh, yeah. He gets it pretty nasty.
He says that Musk wants to impose his freak experiments and play act as God. Yeah. And that he has no respect for American values or traditions.
Wow. That's a pretty sweeping statement.
It is. And the commentator points out that it's starting to sound a lot like anti-foreigner sentiment.
Yeah, it's like he's using Musk's background as a way to discredit him.
Exactly. And I think that's where Bannon loses his argument.
Yeah.
Because even if he has some valid points about government subsidies, they get lost in all this rhetoric.
Right. It's like he's trying to appeal to people's fears and prejudices.
Totally. And that's not a good look.
No, it's not. It undermines his whole argument.
Yeah. But then he switches gears and starts talking about government spending in general.
Okay.
And he brings up this thing called Doge, which I guess is like a person or a committee.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, me neither. But apparently they're supposed to be finding ways to cut the budget.
Okay.
And Bannon's point is that with the deadline approaching and $2 trillion already baked in.
$2 trillion. Wow.
Yeah. He says Doge hasn't saved a single penny.
So he's saying they're failing at their job.
Exactly. And he's really critical of how they're going about it.
How so?
He talks about these random firings and then people getting rehired.
What?
Yeah, he makes it sound like there's no plan, no strategy.
That's chaotic.
Totally. And it makes you wonder if they're actually saving any money in the long run.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very efficient.
Not at all. And
yeah.
You know what's funny is that the commentator in the video actually agrees with Bannon on this point.
Really?
Yeah, they both think that the government is wasting a lot of money.
That's interesting.
It just goes to show you that even people who disagree on a lot of things can find common ground on certain issues.
Absolutely. But then Bannon does something even more surprising.
What's that?
He comes out in defense of Social Security.
Really? That's not what I would expect from him.
Yeah, it's pretty unexpected.
So why is he doing that?
Well, according to the commentator, it's because a lot of his supporters rely on it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so he's basically protecting his base.
But even if it's a political move, the outcome could still be good for a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that sometimes good policy can come from unexpected places.
Yeah. So looking back at all of this, it's been a pretty wild ride.
Yeah, it's definitely been a roller coaster.
We've got this clash between Musk and Bannon. It started with disagreements about immigration and labor. Then Bannon really escalated things with these accusations about Musk being a parasitic illegal immigrant.
Which is just not true about the immigration part.
Right. But it does raise questions about government funding.
Yeah, and how much influence companies should have.
Exactly. And then we've got Bannon's criticisms about Musk's personality and his disregard for American traditions.
Which I think is where he goes off the rails.
I agree. It starts to sound pretty xenophobic.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to demonize Musk.
And then we have the whole thing about government spending and Doge and Social Security.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. And it shows you how complex these issues really are.
Definitely. I mean, there's no easy answers.
Right. And it makes you think about, how much of this is about actual policy and how much of it is just personal animosity.
Yeah, because it's clear that there's some bad blood between Musk and Bannon.
For sure. And that can really cloud the debate.
Absolutely. And I think that's something for all of us to be aware of when we're listening to these public figures. We need to be critical of their motivations.
Right.
And we need to look beyond the rhetoric.
Absolutely. We need to focus on the substance of the arguments.
Yeah, because that's how we can have a productive conversation.
Exactly. And that's how we can actually make progress on these important issues.
Totally. I couldn't agree more.
So it looks like we're about out of time.
Yeah.
But this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
It has been.
I think we've covered a lot of ground.
Definitely.
And I hope our listeners have learned something new today.
You too.
And as always, we encourage you to keep thinking critically about these issues.
Absolutely.
And to form your own opinions.
Yeah, don't just take our word for it.
Exactly. So until next time.
Stay curious.
And thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.